Guys, this is Cody Jones with Jangus Genetics LLC, and had the opportunity to go to a pasture walk, which is basically where you go out and there's a group of folks that get together and that run on pasture, whether it's cows or sheep. The ones I've been to have all been cows, but hopefully maybe I'll go to a sheep one someday soon. But anyway, you go there and you tour their farm, you see their livestock, you see what they're doing. And I've never been to one this time of year, but one of the things that's been really difficult for me as a young farmer without a lot of experience just doing it 100% on grass, trying to limit my hay, is understanding about winter grazing. And I've taken a couple of schools and stuff around, and they kind of explain it, but to be able to see it, apply what I'm doing here on this farm and seeing what these guys that have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years are doing on their farm, there's nothing like it. So it's incredibly educational, and then to get to talk about it with my mentor on the way home, that's pretty cool too. One thing that I've always been trying to figure out, pinpoint, and it's a moving target, but how much grass do you leave behind? And I think that's something that we probably all struggle with if you're in the grass raising business. It's different at different times of the year. One of the big things that I always remember seeing was, take half, leave half, or a third, and a third. You want the cows to eat a third, stand on a third, and leave a third. And there's just so many different opinions on it and ideas on what to do. And it's, it depends on how much rain you're getting, how often you're moving too, how much rest that land's going to get back, what kind of land you're on, how fast is it going to recover. One of the main things I try to do during the growing season is to make sure that grass has a new tip on it before I come back. Because what happens is your leaf is your solar collector. That's what does your photosynthesis. That's how your plant builds energy. And then once the plant has enough energy, it will then store extra energy in the root, and your roots will actually get longer. Always want your plants to be getting the roots deeper, bringing up nutrients, moisture from lower, and just having a healthy ecosystem. And in the long run, that's how we make money and get better without having to go out and buy commercial fertilizers. So I've heard it said, there's the baby stage. I think Salatin says this. There's the baby stage, and then the teenage stage, and then the nursing home stage on your grass. And you always want to graze it about that teenage stage. If it gets below a certain point, you're damaging the roots because you don't leave enough leaf or enough solar collector to come back in and gain energy. So then it robs that stored energy from the roots to regrow the leaf. And you do that a few times, you really stunted your grass. And that's something I've done a lot, probably the biggest way that I mess up. And then you've got your teenage stage, your growth stage, and then you get into what they call the nursing home stage. And this is kind of an interesting way to think about it, but basically for me, especially with fescue, that usually hits about July and August, where that fescue comes to a peak, and it starts to then put its energy into creating a seed head, into reproduction. So that plant's starting to do its job, starting the next cycle, and then it will basically die off. Once it produces a seed head, if you let it do it, it will then die off until and not be nutritious hardly at all. It's just like straw. It's just like eating wood chips until the fall, when it starts to build that energy back up to sink those roots and basically get ready to do it all over again in the spring. So it's a really neat cycle to understand. It's pretty simple really, but there's a lot, to get it to work is incredibly complex and difficult to do sometimes. But we're always kind of guessing and learning and scientifically proven, how much do we leave to gain that optimum energy for both the cows, the plant, the microorganisms, and everything. And I think I'm getting pretty close this year, but it's definitely a learning curve. I'll flip you around and I'll show you what I'm leaving. And I may have to come back here and hit it again. If I do, I will be unrolling hay or feeding hay along with it. But there's still green in here. That I remember a guy I was custom grazing for a few years ago when we took his cattle off in December 1st. He said, "You still got a lot of grass here." And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you think I left enough? And I know what he was asking is, why are you sending my cows home? I'll pay you to leave them here. I'm going to take them home and feed them $4 hay. But it's basically just to save enough of that solar collector to go again next spring. That's kind of the goal and what we want to do, so that grass gets a good start. Also, if we're going to graze it in the spring, we want to have enough dead stuff to go along and balance that diet. So cows will actually die from what's called magnesium deficiency here. And so this grass gets so potent, so much nitrogen, so much protein in it, that the cows will actually, they will actually pass through too much nutrients, and they won't have a right balance, and it can actually, they'll have a deficiency in magnesium and it'll kill them. So the easy heat method to do that is just leave enough brown stuff that they're never getting just 100% fresh growth. When I was a kid, we used to not have any growth. I mean, you'd graze it down to 1 or 2 inches, and when it sprouted back in the spring, all they would get is a bite of that really fresh stuff. And you couldn't feed them hay. They wouldn't eat hay. They wanted that nutrition. They wanted that energy. They wanted that protein. But it would kill them if you weren't careful. And you could put out the best alfalfa hay, and sometimes that would help. But mainly, you normally have to add magnesium to the mineral and give them an extra dose. Is how we combat that in the conventional side of things. But the regenerative side, this is what we're doing. So I'll flip you around. This is a pasture we just pulled out of. We're still leaving quite a bit, so they knock it down. They eat what's good, and especially this time of year, we just had I think it was 19 this morning. So these cows are mad. They're hungry. They want to be moved every day. They want to see fresh grass all the time, and they need that because that's their energy source. And if you eat a bunch of high calorie food, you're going to be warm afterwards, and that's what they're trying to see too. They're just trying to get warmer. But we're leaving enough here that I think we could probably come around one more time in about 60 or 90 days, but we're definitely have enough brown. A lot of this, you see the leaf tips here, a lot of this is going to turn brown over the winter, and it'll start to leach out and lose some nutrient content over time. Fescue is actually one of the best at holding protein in the one of the best winter forages stockpiles in the world, but it's still going to lose some. And then what it'll do is it'll all be brown in the spring, and the new leaves will start shooting up from the bottom. And that's what kills those cows if they're just eating straight 100% high energy green stuff. But if they get a bite of this with that brown stuff in there too, it solves all the problems. Nature is incredible about solving problems if we can figure out how to mimic it. And so you got some leaves over here. You just got to have some dead stuff. But I'd definitely say some people say we're leaving too much. You could make the argument that if you leave too much, of course, another reason not to let them get into the nursing home stage is that the ground has to warm up in the springtime. And so, a conventional farmer could argue, or somebody, one of the guys at the pasture walk was actually trying to kill his fescue and plant something into it. And so he said, we're taking a lot more off so that this other stuff gets a chance to grow. We want to beat up that fescue and kill it. But fescue's pretty tough. But you've got a lot of insulation here. And so the argument is that in the springtime, your sun is never going to reach underneath all this insulation. But there's a few things to think about. One, it's insulation. So the ground temperature is already perfect for growing fescue all year long. So if you have a good coat of fescue, a good buffer of insulation, you can see we're still growing green. I mean, there's some of this still growing. I come back and over in that other field over there, we've been off 60 days. It's sprouting green in middle of December. So I attribute some of that to this insulating layer. We don't want to leave too much because they're right. If you get this up 4 foot and it falls over, the sun will never get down there, and that plant will have a hard time. It just suffocates it, basically. But where we're running through this, the cattle are stepping on it. They're pushing it down. They're feeding the microbes in the soil. And, if I could leave it like this, maybe an inch, maybe one more pass, a quick pass. Like I was in here for 2-3 days, and I would leave them in here for 1 day next time and just start moving them a lot faster, which you want to do in the spring anyway. But it's definitely a learning experience for me. And I'm going to try to feed less than 1 bale per cow this winter. Hopefully less than that, but we'll have to see how it does all depend on. I don't want my cows to suffer because I've got a big learning curve ahead of me. So I'd rather feed them than have them suffer because I'm learning. These cows have never really had to work for it in the wintertime. They'll learn how to graze through snow, and it'll be a learning curve for both of us, but we won't let them go hungry, that's for sure. The one thing that I've always heard is they can't graze through ice. If you get an inch of ice, they're just not going to get it done. But they graze cows in Canada through 18 inches of snow all the time, and especially when you get them in big bunches and move them tight. They're just like little bulldozers. They get what they want. At that point, usually they don't even need a lot of water if they got the right kind of snow. But it's a big learning curve. And then one thing I always like to look for is the manure patties and see how they're doing. We've got a lot less soil microbial life right now. The dung beetles are it's cold. Like I said, it was 19 this morning, but this patty probably about right. This one's getting a little big. So, you know, it probably wouldn't hurt to move them a little bit faster. Hope you guys enjoy this video. If you have any questions or any comments on you know, this is specific to my environment in Missouri on Kentucky 31 fescue. I mean, that's my base. That's basically 90% of what I got. There's other grasses growing in here. We've got some clovers that come up, but our base is fescue. So I would love to hear how you do it around the world. I've always heard that, you know, a really good farmer, an amazing farmer in one spot can move 200 miles away and be an okay farmer and move 500 miles away and fall flat on his face. So learning curve, and everybody does it a little differently, but winter feeding practice is, hay is one of your most, winter feed is, I guess, is one of your most expensive costs. And in a low input herd, we've got to have cows that will do it on less. And that's my goal with these cows. These black cows, man, they shine this time of year. They are comfortable. This is perfect. I think it's probably, I'm pretty cold without my gloves on. I'd say it's probably, I don't know, 32, 33 degrees out. And, you know, everything is just loving it except for my little bitty babies. And I'm going to fix that next year by pulling the bull a little sooner. But those calves are big enough now that they're doing fine. And their mama's giving them plenty of milk. So anyway, I'd love to hear how you guys do it. If you enjoy this content, you know, have any questions or suggestions, let me know. And like, subscribe, and follow for more. Thanks.